use of gasoline to capture rattlesnakes for roundups, but also for other purposes. This is something that not everybody knows happens, and even those who know about this, they don't always register the full consequences of this. But there are, as you can imagine, enormous environmental consequences, and I'm going to go over a few of them with you. All right. Next slide. It shows that, of course, studies show that it, of course, affects the animal involved directly, the rattlesnake, but also other animals, but definitely the rattlesnake. It can be very lethal, and it can cause lots and lots of, even if it's not immediately lethal, it will eventually be lethal, cause lots and lots of problems, health problems, and then is actually not exactly a new subject. Some people quote 30-year-old sources and mention that, but some quote more recent sources. But I've found one government-sponsored study conducted by someone named J. Guy W. Johnson in the Canadian Medical Association journals, and it was dated to the year 1913, so we've known about this for over 100 years. This is so to somebody who disputes the fact that gasoline is harmful to animals and organisms of all types, well, almost all types at least. Their science is outdated by at least 100 years, if not more so. In the early 70s, fairly well-known paper was written by two scientists about the harmful effect of habitat destruction during snake collection. They often focused on roundups, but they didn't quite focus too much on gasoline. They actually focused on the use of power tools, the use of large grappling hooks to remove rocks and destroy den sites. But they do mention gasoline, and gasoline has been used in almost all states that have had roundups, and many of these states have also used dynamite, believe it or not. And dynamite actually stopped being used because they then realized that it was not profitable to sell little bits and pieces of rattlesnakes and other small animals. That, and of course, there was a much more obvious public health hazard. Jonathan Campbell, one scientist, a herpetologist, found that in lab studies that rattlesnakes exposed to gas fumes for half hour to an hour, and we did long recovery times, as much as 1 to 7 hours, and they often die. A lot of times they would die. It's a pretty ugly way to go. So you could definitely argue that it is a very cruel act. Next slide. Oh, you can't quite see that, but yeah, it's a little cartoon. But it is, using gasoline fumes is of course harmful to pretty much all wildlife. Maybe some extremophile bacteria might not mind it so much. Pretty much all plants, animals, fungi, almost the vast majority of microbes are greatly harmed by this. And yet it is legal in this state right now to use several milliliters, and by several I mean several hundred milliliters of gasoline. Of course, I can't imagine there are too many people actually investigating how much gasoline is used. I'll get onto that in a bit. Next slide. Here are the general ecological consequences. Many animals are known to share rattlesnake burrows. These are some of the animals listed: turtles, gophers,
tortoises, various lizards, yeah, kangaroo rats, ringtails, and bobcats and kit foxes. They'll sometimes use the burrows for their young, but usually they also go in neighboring burrows, and they are also predators of rattlesnakes. And that is actually a huge consequence, because once a toxin gets introduced to the ecosystem, it actually gets concentrated when a predator eats a prey item. And a lot of people say rattlesnakes need to be controlled, so they say they're actually a prey item for a lot of animals. A lot of animals eat them. Birds of prey, various mammals, and a few other animals I'm going to introduce you to. And of course, burrowing owls and honeybees. And there are several endangered vertebrates. I mentioned sort of a few of them, or at least threatened. And there are endangered vertebrates, or invertebrates, that I'm going to show you about in a little bit. Next slide, please. Oh, there's first the vertebrates, the burrowing owl. Oh, look at that, it got cut off. I tell you, I'm still, it always looks good. Anyway, yeah, burrowing owls, they're a very interesting animal. They don't really prey on large things like rattlesnakes, but you know, they prey on lots of mice neighboring there. So the gasoline that affects anything like mice, it'll also get that also affect them and get concentrated into the food chain. And another interesting thing is that while they share burrows with rattlesnakes, they don't always do so. However, the young have a very interesting defense. They actually make a rattling noise, similar to a rattlesnake when disturbed. So I can only imagine if a hunter was nearby, wanted to try and get a rattlesnake, and poured some gasoline, or sprayed some gasoline, I guess you should technically say, into a den with burrowing owl. Figure that out. Oh, go ahead. Next one. Kangaroo rat, that's another one. They're pretty much all over the place. And you know, there's several species, some more common than others, but they are an important prey item. They're very important, not just to snakes and birds of prey, but also to various mammals, and you know, even animals that may be hunted. So if you know, again, a nice little prey item that will get introduced to the food chain, and that can be concentrated upward. Desert tortoises, they actually make a lot of the burrows, and interesting things have happened, especially back east with the eastern counterpart, the gopher tortoise. They have a similar ecological niche. They actually make burrows for, and what happens is eastern diamondback rattlesnakes and other rattlesnakes use them. And I have, and I'm going to try and at one point quantify this more, but I have gone looking for reptiles down south, and so my friends, we've encountered areas where there used to be active dens, and they're no longer active, and some of them are actually devoid of even plant life. And I've asked locals, why is this? And they flat out said, oh, it's because of the roundups. The roundups, you know, people, snake hunters, poured gasoline, and keep pouring gasoline. So that actually killed some spots. And yeah, it's a pretty bad thing there. And you know, it's something that can be avoided here, that kind of mistake. Action has to be taken. Next slide. There's another one, the greater earless lizard. That's only found in Texas. That species, the genus is found throughout the Southwest but in parts of Mexico, that is only found in Texas, though, and that is something that is also potentially affected by gassing. Next slide. All right. And invertebrates. I'm sure you're seeing a pattern here. There's a lot of animals that are affected. This is actually a very abridged list. I could name well over a dozen offhand for each of them. And here are some of the endangered species for invertebrates. There's so many, I'm going to limit to the endangered species. This was actually a study done recently about some of them affected. And you have the Cumberland Springs riffle beetle, the bone cave harvestman, and the government canyon bat spider. I have to admit, the first one and the last one of those, I'd never even heard of until I researched that. So I can imagine most people have not heard of them. Go ahead. Next slide. There's a picture of the bone cave harvestman. Next slide. Oh, there's supposed to be another one. Oh. But here's another thing. My friend who works in the Texas Department of Health actually brought this up to me. This credit is due to him. This meat of rattlesnakes gets sold at roundups, and many of those probably were gassed. So they are actually being sold to the public for consumption. Possible food safety issues. Most of the compounds of gasoline would be fat soluble and therefore have a long half-life in carcasses. And the persistence of such factors would actually be even longer in rattlesnakes due to the fact that they're reptiles and they have fairly low metabolism. So